This is the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
I'm Stephen A. Good noon, everybody. Welcome to the latest edition of the Stephen A. Smith Show, coming at you as I love to do every weekday over the airwaves of ESPN Radio, of course, 250 markets across the country, plus Sirius XM, ESPN style, Channel 80. Number to call them as always is 888-729-3776. That's 888-SAY-ESPN. Got a jam-packed show coming your way, some NFL talk to get into. Matt Patricia and Josh McDaniels and whether or not they're deserving of being head coaches in the National Football League. We'll get into all of that. Plus LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers. How much trouble legitimately are they in after getting waxed by the Golden State Warriors last night? It was a competitive game, but Kevin Durant is coming. I've said it many, many times. He's not just coming for a title. He's coming for LeBron James, and he continues to show it every time they step out on a court against one another. We'll talk about that as the show progresses today, right here with the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio. But it's time for Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless, best phones, best networks, no contracts. We know where I'm going. We know where I'm going. The Houston Rockets showed up at the Staples Center last night to go up against the Los Angeles Lakers. At a time when they went up against, Los Angeles Clippers, I apologize. CP3, his first game at the Staples Center against the Clippers since he was traded. And by the way, he was traded at his own behest because he turned down a 5-year, $200+ million deal to stay with the Clippers. Some have found that highly questionable considering the fact that he's 32 years of age with an injury-prone history, at least to some small degree. Everybody recognizes that. Nevertheless, I consider him one of the greatest point guards to have ever played. I consider him one of the elite point guards in NBA history, a future Hall of Famer. There is no doubt about that. However, having said all of that, on this particular day, we have to talk about the great Chris Paul, CP3, in an entirely different light than I'm accustomed to talking about him. We have to talk about him in a fashion where negativity and fault gets aimed in his direction. There's no way around this. There's no way around this. The Houston Rockets couldn't hit the backside of Broadway last night. As a result, lost the game to the Los Angeles Clippers, who have now won their 5th straight. And in the throes of losing, Blake Griffin gets into a heated discussion with CP3. Ultimately, that was in the first half. In the second half, he drives to the basket, shoves CP3 aside, little elbow there, here and there. Ultimately ends up going to the sideline, elbows, or runs into Mike D'Antoni, according to Mike D'Antoni. As a result, you saw D'Antoni spew an expletive in Blake Griffin's direction. CP3 comes out of nowhere. He makes sure to get into Blake Griffin's face. They have to be separated. Fair enough. Few plays later, Trevor Ariza is on the court. Next thing you know, he's looking to the sidelines. Blake Griffin's getting ready to fall out of bounds, slams the ball into the back of Eric Gordon. Should have thrown the ball lower, but that's neither here nor there because he didn't hit him in the head. But ultimately, Trevor Ariza is seen talking to somebody. Turns out it's Austin Rivers who's in street clothes because he's been injured. Austin Rivers is joined back and forth with Trevor Ariza. Trevor Ariza ultimately has to be restrained from talking to Austin Rivers. Clippers win the game. Teams go to their respective locker rooms. One would think it's over from there. Turns out it wasn't. What happens? Now, this ain't just a radio host. This is the insider talking to you. This is what I'm told happened. And by the way, Adrian Wojnarowski for ESPN reported this. He was on television last night doing a tremendous job. He always does from an informational standpoint, educating us about what transpired. But I made sure to make calls of my own to find out what the hell happened. And I did. The Clippers are in the locker room. There's a back or side entrance to the Clippers locker room. It's where the players eat. But there's also an entrance beyond that point that gets you in through the back way into the Clippers training room. There's one person that would know that for the Houston Rockets. It would happen to be Chris Paul, CP3, the former Clipper. But Trevor Ariza walks in. According to my sources, CP3 is right behind him. According to my sources, Trevor Ariza starts screaming in the direction of an Austin Rivers and to a lesser degree, Blake Griffin. DeAndre Jordan sees this because his locker is closest to the training room, which I would happen to know because I've been in that locker room and I know where DeAndre Jordan's locker stall is. And DeAndre Jordan says y'all don't belong in here. And y'all ain't getting past me. And then out of nowhere comes James Harden. But outside of the locker room, at least 6 additional members of the Houston Rockets, according to my sources, are looking to get in the locker room. Here's the crux of it all. The leader, the point guard extraordinaire, the future Hall of Famer, the role model, the upstanding citizen, and the president of the NBA Players Association, which happens to be CP3. According to the Clippers, my sources with the Clippers and my sources that were in the locker room, CP3 did absolutely positively nothing to stop anybody. And ultimately, Patrick Beverley, the rough rider that he is, you know anything about Patrick Beverley, that's how he rolls. He's going to roll with his teammates no matter what. Patrick Beverley came up behind DeAndre Jordan and started yelling in the direction of his former teammates, Ariza and all of those boys, because he wasn't having them come in the locker room trying to start something physically. Clearly, the NBA will conduct an investigation. It is entirely plausible that suspensions may come down, if not at least fines. And the person that I'm looking at is CP3. Now, let me say this. I did a final take today on First Take on ESPN. And all I'm going to say to you is what I said on Final Take. I had to read it a little fast because we were running out of time. But it's apropos in terms of what I have to say about CP3. I could not have put it any better than I put it on my Final Take on First Take today. I want y'all to listen to it.
It's time to stop playing games and just be honest. When it comes to the behavioral issues in the world of sports, this is the Colin Kaepernick era. This is the era where the microscope has been intensified, where mistakes have been magnified, where simple apologies are shoved aside and brands are tarnished indefinitely, especially if you're the black athlete. LeBron James may be the shining example of an athlete that actually appears to have gotten that reality throughout his career, but he isn't the only one. There's this miniature dynamo named Chris Paul, a.k.a. CP3, who's been pretty pristine himself. A spectacular point guard, a future Hall of Famer, philanthropic at his core, not to mention a great pedigree due to a fantastic parent and a phenomenally supportive sibling as his right-hand man. Paul, known as well for his poise and professionalism, also happens to be the president of the National Basketball Players Association, which is what makes his reported actions following Monday night's game at the Staples Center that much more inexcusable. To be clear, reports have inundated the news that CP3, the former Clipper, who turned down 5 years, $200 million plus to avoid playing for Doc Rivers with Austin Rivers and Blake Griffin, is seen spewing expletives at Griffin, getting in his face, then tried to sneak into a back entrance in his former team's locker room with other members of the Houston Rockets to get at both Griffin and Rivers. If this is true, and please don't doubt that CP3 possesses his own interpretation of things, how on earth does this look? Not just for his brand, not just to the NBA, which will conduct its own investigation, no doubt, but also for the black athlete, a group CP3 prides himself in caring so very much for. In this age of Kaepernick, we all know what's happened to the black athlete. They've been labeled ungrateful, prima donnas, hell-bent on bucking the status quo, disruptive, etc., etc. That Kaepernick was right, having had his real cause hijacked, is irrelevant to folks anymore. They've adopted their own belief. Just ask the NFL about their ratings, and you'll get the picture. Few know this better than CP3. Few comprehend its significance and works more tirelessly to debunk such idiocy and stigmas. Except it appears he didn't last night, purportedly with some of his teammates, on a day we're celebrating Dr. Martin Luther King, no less. That simply can't happen, y'all. That simply can't happen.
No, it cannot happen. On the day that we're celebrating Dr. Martin Luther King, arguably the greatest civil rights leader ever known, who preached nonviolence, an abundance of athletes, all of which were primarily black, were tempted or appeared willing to engage in violence. And one of the people in the middle of it all, it is one of the most upstanding professional athletes we will ever encounter, who cares about his image, who cares about family, who cares about his reputation, and who happens to be the president of the Players Association. We'll find out more in the hours and days and weeks and months ahead. But one thing is clear. Regardless of what level of affection or lack thereof Chris Paul may have had for Austin Rivers, for Blake Griffin, for Doc Rivers, you cannot find yourself in this kind of situation. It just looks bad. And I'm going to say it again. It's the Colin Kaepernick era. Fair or not, because of an issue that has been hijacked, you have folks out there looking at the modern day black athlete, viewing them as unappreciative, ungrateful, and too willing to buck the system instead of going out there and performing. And they're looking for an excuse to turn against you, which the NFL and its troubles have shown. It may not be fair. I damn sure don't think it is, nor do I think it's right. But it's reality. And forgive me if I expected one of the most intelligent and upstanding athletes I've ever encountered, named Chris Paul, to get that better than anybody. He does. He just lost his way last night. If, indeed, these reports are true, and I'm being told it's true.
You're listening to the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Let me be very, very clear about who I am and what I'm about when it comes to issues like this. I'm not trying to get on CP3. I got love for CP3. He's a good man. He's a great player, and he's a future Hall of Famer. I've had the pleasure of meeting his parents on many occasions, speaking to his brother on many occasions, not just him, some of the best people I know. That's not what this is about. This is about reminding them and all of these athletes out here, especially the black athlete, times are different. Times are different. We don't like it. Listen, let me be very, very clear. And I'm not trying to make this some Colin Kaepernick discussion. All right? So I'm not going to entertain that. I'm just speaking factually. The Colin Kaepernick issue was hijacked. Colin Kaepernick was not disrespecting the flag. Colin Kaepernick was talking about racial oppression, police brutality, inequality, and to a lesser degree, an absence of civil rights. That was what his focus and his message was. The president of the United States of America, Donald Trump, successfully hijacked the issue and turned it into something else. And as a result, look at what has happened to the NFL and its ratings. Look at how much money, arguably, it has cost the National Football League. And by the way, there were no players protesting the NFL. NFL didn't have anything to do with the protest. These players weren't protesting the NFL. They used the NFL platform to bring attention to a bigger issue at the expense of billionaires whose hands they have extended to get money from. That's a fact. I'm not saying they were wrong. I'm not judging anybody. I'm telling you fact. The NFL players, unless you were protesting the owners, understand that the owners think differently than you. If they're white billionaires or Pakistani, Their issues may be different than African Americans throughout the United States of America. That's just a fact. So their view is different. Their vantage point is different. And as a result, because of what happened with Colin Kaepernick, you think white folks and other folks out there in the world that had a problem with Kaepernick's position are just looking at NFL players? No, they're not. They're looking at him as a black man, complaining about folks who are not black. They have personalized it and as a result have turned their ire towards you if you are acting in a fashion that they deem unnecessary, unwarranted, or offensive. That is a fact. That is a fact. And so because of that, knowing that, everything that you do, you have to take that into account before you act. So if you're LeBron James and you speak up about MLK and you use that as an opportunity to address the president and his divisive tendencies, I understand. You use that and you want to bring attention to the issue of inequality, of unemployment, of immigration, or whatever the case may be. I understand that. Tell me what last night's incident at the Staples Center involved visiting players trying to get into the home team's locker room to get physically at a couple of players on the home team. What does that have to do with the kind of issues we're talking about here? Absolutely nothing, except with this one respect. It's violence. On Martin Luther King Jr. holiday. How do you think naysayers and critics looking for an excuse to get at you are going to react to that fodder you handed to them on a silver platter? I mean, why didn't you just spit in their face and tell them it was raining? You don't see how this correlates? Now there are people out there, you know what they're going to sit up there and talk about. Whether it's Stephen or anybody else, trust me, sell out and all of this other nonsense. All those people could kick rocks. Nobody's speaking against Kaepernick. Nobody's speaking against anybody in particular. What we're doing is keeping you mindful of the issues that are permeating our community through the prism of sports and how you have to watch out for that. Now, all of the players are accountable. Austin Rivers is accountable for running his mouth just as much as James Harden and Clint Capella and Trevor Ariza and everybody else was looking for a physical confrontation. But the reason I bring CP3 up into the equation is for two reasons and two reasons only. A, you're the former Clipper. These are your new teammates. Don't tell me that your relationship or lack thereof with Austin Rivers, with Blake Griffin, didn't have something to do with their willingness to rally and be supportive of you against the Clippers. Nonsense. We all know that had something to do with it. And number two, and more importantly, you're the president of the Players Association. You're a leader. You're not just a leader on a basketball court. You're not just a leader because of your greatness and your future Hall of Fame stature. You're not just a leader because of the guidance and the counsel you provide to some of these youngsters on a come up. You're not just a leader because you're going to be one of the highest paid players and you're a star in the NBA. You're actually officially via a title, a leader in the NBA because you're a leader of the Players Association. When the NBA wanted to negotiate a multi-billion-dollar deal, you were sitting across the table from the owners. Michelle Roberts can't approve a deal without your approval. You're the leader. That's all I'm saying. As an upstanding citizen in terms of how to conduct yourself and what have you, I don't know too many people better than Chris Paul. This is not some indictment against the character of Chris Paul or anything like that. This is talking strictly about last night. You cannot find yourself in that position. It cannot happen. Not from you, not Chris Paul. Clint Capella, Trevor Ariza, it's all unadvisable. Austin Rivers, fine, it's all non-advisable. I get it. But CP3 cannot have his name associated with this. Great guy, great player. Great family man. Proud to know him. He dropped the ball last night. Just because he was involved. 888-729-3776. That's 888-SAY-ESPN. Back with your calls and more in a minute. You're listening live to the Stephen A. Smith Show. ESPN Radio.
Guess what?
You're in the middle of the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Damn it, I mean it!
I enjoy taking positions that I have to take against some of the guys that I have such incredible respect for. And CP3 is one of them. The flip side to it is that you got to call it like you see it. And you got to highlight a particular position that you take without castigating a person's character and overall persona. And there's certainly no reason to do that here with a guy the quality of a CP3. I just disagree with what happened last night, according to what I've heard and according to what's being reported. And Charles Barkley was on TNT talking about, this is why you hate the media, because they tried to bait Chris Paul into answering something negative about Blake Griffin. Well, excuse me, that's because there is something about Blake Griffin that he obviously feels. That's a story. CP3 passed up and this is what I want to say, Charles Barkley. If I was in his face, I'd say it, but it was over Twitter, so I'm not going to bother him. But I love my brother. But here's the reality. Chris Paul walked away from $200 million. So he didn't have to play for them. So he didn't have to play for Doc Rivers. So he didn't have to play with Austin Rivers. What are y'all talking about? That's the story. What other story is there? What was a reporter supposed to ask? And if there was nothing that was going on, Charles Barkley, well, then why would CP3 and the Houston Rockets try to get in the locker room afterwards? He's telling me to let it go. I know you got a radio show. Yes, I do. I have a national radio show. 250 plus markets across the United States of America, plus my national television show. Yes, I do. But that is beside the point. The point is that it's a legitimate story. It's almost like Rick Carlisle, Stan Van Gundy, and Steve Kerr and everybody talking about LeVar Ball, talking about Luke Walton was not a story. It is considered a source, and Greg Popovich is added to that list. Well, his son is the number 2 overall pick, who happens to be the point guard of the Los Angeles Lakers. I mean, if I sit up there, all right, and Carmelo Anthony is still on the Knicks, and I'm his brother, and I say Kristaps Porzingis is trash, I don't give a damn about him. As far as I'm concerned, he's hurting my brother's game. He's the one that's trying to get my brother traded. You don't think that's a story? Of course it is. Of course it is. I mean, it's unbelievable. I'm not going to even bring up the fact that a whole bunch of folks without a journalism degree want to tell people how to do journalism. I'm not going to bring up the fact that, excuse me, none of us would matter if folks were playing in front of empty seats and nobody was watching us on television or listening to us on radio. I'm not going to get into any of that. Since we want to act like Joe Public is just non-existent and don't need to be informed about such things. I'll leave it alone. It's unbelievable. It's just unbelievable. 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. Joel in New Jersey, you're live with Stephen A. What's up?
Stephen, Joel, how are you, brother?
I'm all right.
Hear
Go
me
ahead,
out
man.
for a minute, Stephen. Hear me out. Because a lot of your fans don't know that you did play college basketball. And a lot of fans don't know that you did have them shorts on at one point. Some people just think that you're just talking from a journalistic aspect. People don't know that you are talking from a locker. And especially when it comes to the NBA, I've been following you for a long time. And I had the privilege to be a ball boy for a guy named Fritz Massman and learn how to be a man from a guy named Otis Birdsong. And I am Caucasian. And inside those locker rooms, when people like Austin Rivers continue to to bait people, and when they don't even. This is my opinion. When they barely belong in the league, when they feel entitled because of the college they came from, and the college coach did his dad a favor. When Chris Paul just got tired of watching him be entitled, he lost it. I agree with you. He shouldn't have lost it.
Stop right there. Austin Rivers is not great. But Austin Rivers doesn't deserve to be disrespected the way you disrespected him. Austin Rivers was a decent player at Duke. Austin Rivers is a decent player in the NBA. He's actually one of the better defenders, and he's not a scrub. I've seen plenty of players in the NBA significantly worse than Austin Rivers. I'm not going to tell you he's a star, and I'm not going to tell you there's anything great about his game. But you can do far worse on most teams than an Austin Rivers. I'm not going to disrespect him like that. That's not fair. He's not on the level of CP3, not even in the same stratosphere. CP3 is on another level than most. CP3 is great, and I understand that. But that doesn't give you nor anyone else an excuse to disrespect Austin Rivers so flagrantly. He is not a scrub. He is not a scrub.
Entitlement. He doesn't come from the hard work that Chris. That's not fair. That's not fair. That's not fair, bro. I'm not going to lie to you. You're being prejudiced. You're being prejudiced against somebody with a relatively affluent background. And listen to me, Joel. Stop talking and listen, because I got your pipe down. Nobody hears you anyway. So just listen to what I'm saying to you. Austin Rivers, just because you come from an affluent background, because his daddy obviously was successful, doesn't mean you didn't work hard. It doesn't mean that you're a scrub. You might not have the want to that some others might wish you had in terms of somebody that's coming from a impoverished background that's starving for success and is willing to put their life on the line to win. Fair enough. But I got news for you. Austin Rivers, by all accounts, actually does work hard. And again, you could disagree with him chirping on the sideline. All of that's true. But there's nothing about Austin Rivers' personality that he did because he's playing for his dad. Austin Rivers was that guy at Duke. Austin Rivers was that guy when he got drafted by New Orleans. Austin Rivers has been the same guy with the Clippers. You can like him or dislike him, but don't act like it's some kind of special treatment that has him the way that he is. He's the way that he is because he's the way that he is. Can you not respect that, Joel? Answer the question. I can. Coming from you, yes, Stephen, I can. But my point still is he's chirping at a Hall of Famer.
But he wasn't chirping at the Hall of Fame. He was chirping at Trevor Ariza. He didn't have any beef with CP3. Him and Trevor Ariza was chirping at one another. And CP3 and the other players got involved. Austin Rivers was talking to Trevor Ariza.
You know, we both love this game very much, Stephen. I'm just surprised that actually took place to that level.
So
when I was a ball boy in the locker room, this players never talked about going to the locker room.
Listen, the bottom line is it happened. It happened, and it shouldn't have happened. And I got to look at the leaders that allowed it to happen, which is why I'm mentioning CP3, because he's bigger than that, he's smarter than that, and he's better than that. There's no way around it. Appreciate the call. 888-729-3776. That's 888-SAY-ESPN. By the way, no matter what the weather is outside, you can always brighten the day with 1-800-Flowers.com. When you order a dozen multicolored roses for only $29.99, you'll get another dozen absolutely free. So just go to 1-800-Flowers.com, please, /ESPN. More of the Stephen A. Smith Show. More of your phone calls in a minute. Stick around. Don't touch that dial. You're listening live to the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio.
Guess what?
You're in the middle of the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Damn it, I mean it!
Welcome back to the Stephen A. Smith Show, right here on ESPN Radio. Hour number 2, I'll get into the Cavs, Warriors, what transpired last night, kind of things you need to look forward to as the show progresses. I'll also talk about who presumably the next Giants head coach is going to be, New York Giants, in the National Football League. And I'll tell you why I believe it should be a huge question mark as to whether or not Matt Patricia and Josh McDaniels should become head coaches in the National Football League as the defensive and offensive coordinator, respectively, of the New England Patriots. We'll talk about all of that and then some as the show progresses today. Until then, we'll get back to the phones at 888-729-3776, 888-SAY-ESPN. Morris in Long Beach, you're live with Stephen A. What's up?
Yeah, Stephen A., I just wanted to say that the Bible teaches us to be slow to anger, and that pride comes before destruction. And I think that what happened last night was Chris Paul forgot that he was a man of God. But that spirit that manifested in Paul's response, or that created his response, happened when he recognized that the Clippers were a better team and that he made a mistake when he went to Houston. He realized that, oh my God.
I think you're wrong, Morris. There's no way on earth that Chris Paul is going to use a regular season game with a team that was 500 coming into the game and surmise that they're a better team and he should not have left. That is not true. That is patently false. I can assure you Chris Paul does not feel that way.
He believes it right now, Stephen A.
He does not. I'm telling you what I know. They're not special. They've won 5 straight. They're 22-21. All right. Doc Rivers is doing a hell of a job coaching them at this particular moment in time. We understand that. But no, the Clippers are not special. Where do you think Clippers are going this year? Where do you think they're going?
They're going to win it this year.
Hold on. Win what? Win what? Hold on. Stop. Win what?
They're going to win the NBA championship this year.
Morris, you are officially banned from calling this show for the rest of the week. Have a nice day. Morris is not allowed. Don't have Morris in Long Beach call the show for the rest of the week. He can come back on next week because I got love for Morris. He is officially banned from calling this show for the rest of the week. That's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. He is not allowed. Do you understand, Nuno? Do you understand, Cat Pastor? You understand, Jonathan Winthrop? Morris in Long Beach is not allowed to call into this show for the rest of this week. I will not tolerate such idiocy. He just said the Clippers are going to win the championship. I will not tolerate such idiocy. He's not allowed to call into the show for the rest of the week. Let's go to Chris in L.A. You're live with Stephen A. Real quick, Chris. Go ahead.
Hey, Stephen A. Good morning. Good afternoon. Yeah, I would ban him too, Stephen A. if I had him on radio show.
That's right.
But real quick, I want to jump into what happened with Cleveland last night and kind of get into the root of the problem.
You don't have much time, Chris, so just go ahead and do it.
Okay, real quick. The 3 championships LeBron's won over the past, he's had one thing in common. And that was somebody he can trust, he can close. Isaiah being the great player, he can score, do all that stuff, but I don't believe LeBron trust him or anyone else on that roster like he did with Kyrie, like he did with Dwayne when he was in Miami. So with that being said, when the trade talks were going with Kyrie and Isaiah, who won that trade? This is why I believe Boston won the trade, not just because he's younger, he's a proven commodity. It's because you know what you're going to get with Kyrie come crunch time, and LeBron doesn't have that right now. I think deep down he knows that, Stephen A.
Well, listen, of course he knows that, and it ain't deep down. It's obvious. It's obvious. And I'll deal with LeBron in hour number 2 because I got a lot to say based off of what last night's game was. What about CP3 real quick?
I think he was out of line, Stephen A., but he just he ultimately knows that Clippers are nobody, but they let him get in his head. I mean, he'll be okay. He's a player association. I don't condone it, but he'll be okay.
That's residue from his days with them, which is why he left. But you can't be the president of the Players Association and find yourself involved in that situation. You agree with me on that, right?
I 1,000% agree, Stephen A.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much. Number to call up as always is 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. Hour number 2, I'm going to get into what happened to the Cleveland Cavaliers last night. What none of y'all are talking about nearly as much as you should outside of my man Will Cain. Outside of him. Nobody's been talking about this enough, but I will. Hour number 2 with Stephen A. up next. Don't touch that dial.
That's just a sample of what you'll hear on the Stephen A. Smith Show. Weekdays at 1 p.m. Eastern on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.